I was lying in a hospital bed with wires taped to my chest when the nurse walked in and said, "Mr. Blake, your daughter just sold your house." I blinked, confused, thinking it had to be a medication mix-up. But then she pulled up the listing on her tablet, my address, my porch, my living room, marked sold. Emily hadn't called. Not a word. I was still healing from a heart attack, and she'd sold the only home I'd ever known. That house had my wife's laughter in the walls. And now, it was gone. Before we continue, I'd love to know, where are you watching from today? Comment below. And don't forget to subscribe for more. I wasn't always this broken old man lying in a hospital bed, blindsided by betrayal. There was a time I stood tall, strong enough to hold my world together with just my hands and a little grit. And back then, my world was small, just me, Marjorie, and later, our baby girl Emily. Marjorie died too soon. Cancer doesn't care about age or kindness, it just takes. She was 38. I was 41. And Emily, she was only 7. I remember the day we buried her mother. Emily held my hand the whole time, her little fingers clinging to mine like she thought I might vanish too. After that, it was just the two of us. I built the house before Emily was born. Every beam, every nail, I worked nights and weekends, poured concrete with calloused hands, hammered siding by lantern light. It wasn't fancy, but it was solid. I used to joke that it was earthquake-proof. Marjorie painted the shutters herself, this pale shade of blue she called hummingbird wing. After she passed, I poured everything I had left into raising our daughter. I worked as a carpenter, mostly home renovations. Nothing glamorous, but it paid the bills and left me enough time to be present, always home for dinner, always there for bedtime stories. I packed her lunches with little notes. Every Friday we watched black and white westerns and made popcorn the old-fashioned way. She'd sit cross-legged beside me and say, "I want to live here forever, Daddy." I believed her. Back then, she was sunshine. Big brown eyes, always asking questions. Why do birds fly in verses? Do stars fall? And she never went to bed without saying, "Good night, I love you, see you in the morning." Her teenage years weren't easy, of course. No teenager is. But even through the slammed doors and silent dinners, I never stopped loving her. I grounded her once for sneaking out with her friends. She cried, screamed that I didn't trust her. I told her the truth, it's not about trust, it's about care. And you don't get to outgrow that. After that, she started writing me notes again. Little apologies, folded like origami cranes. I kept every one of them. Still have them in a shoebox in the attic. I remember her high school graduation like it was yesterday. I wore the only suit I owned, too tight in the shoulders, but I didn't care. She gave a speech, looked out into the crowd, found my eyes, and said, "Everything I am, I owe to my dad." I cried right there in front of the whole gymnasium. She got a scholarship to a good university 2 states over. I helped her pack every box, labeled each one neatly, kitchen, bedroom, books. She hugged me tight before she left and said, "Don't let the house get too quiet without me." The house did get quiet. Painfully so. But I didn't mind. It still had her laughter in the walls. Her childhood drawings still hung in the hallway. I dusted her room every Sunday. I never changed the sheets. When she came home on breaks, it felt like spring again. She'd talk about professors, internships, city life. I'd listen, proud and amazed. She was becoming someone bigger, bolder. I knew that was a good thing. After college, she got a job in real estate, said it was temporary until she figured things out. She started dressing sharper, talking faster. Her visits home became less frequent. Then it was just birthdays. Then only holidays. Sometimes not even that. But I still made her favorite meal every Thanksgiving, roast chicken with thyme, sweet potatoes with cinnamon, the way Marjorie used to make them. I'd set a place for her even when she didn't come. Maybe I held on too tightly to the past. Maybe I didn't want to see the space growing between us. I kept telling myself it was just life, busy schedules, time slipping by. But now, looking back, I wonder if that space wasn't just time, but distance she chose to create. And yet, even after the cold phone calls, the missed birthdays, the growing silences, I never thought she'd do what she did. I never thought my little girl, the one who used to call me her hero, would sell the house I built while I was too weak to stand, let alone fight. No, that version of Emily, the one who sold the house? I don't know her. But I knew someone once. Someone who used to fall asleep on my chest while I hummed old country songs. Someone who cried when I scraped my hand fixing her bike. Someone who, when she was 8, asked if heaven had blue shutters like ours. I held on to that little girl for so long. Too long, maybe. The first time I noticed something had changed, it wasn't loud. It was quiet. That's the part that stays with you, how subtle betrayal starts. Like a crack in the drywall, barely visible at first, until it spreads across the entire wall. It was after Emily got promoted at her firm. She came home one weekend, not for a holiday, just to visit. I'd spent the whole day tidying the yard, repainting the porch railing, even fixing that squeaky hinge on the back gate she always hated. I made her favorite, chicken pot pie from scratch, just like Marjorie used to. She arrived in a sleek black car, not her usual clunker. Stepped out in heels, blazer sharp as a blade. Her smile was thin, distracted. "Hey, Dad," she said, barely glancing up from her phone. "Place looks nostalgic." That word. Nostalgic. Not homey, or beautiful, or even familiar. Nostalgic, like something that belonged in a photo album, not real life. At dinner, she barely touched her plate. Just pushed peas around with her fork. "This neighborhood's changed a lot," she said. "Houses going for almost double what they were 5 years ago. You could make a killing, you know." I gave a half smile. "It's not for sale." She chuckled. "Everything's for sale, Dad." She said it like a joke, but something in her tone stuck with me. Cold. Detached. I brushed it off. Maybe she was just stressed from work. But then came the suggestions, quiet, casual, like she was planting seeds. "Have you thought about downsizing? Wouldn't it be easier if you had a condo? Less upkeep. You could get a nice place closer to the city. Near me." At first, I thought she was just being considerate. She worried about me living alone. That's what daughters do, right? But the more she talked, the less it sounded like care and more like strategy. Then she brought someone with her. A man. Slick suit, firm handshake. Introduced himself as David, from Ridgepoint Realty. Said he specialized in mature asset transitions. Whatever that meant. He walked through my house like he already owned it. "Great bones," he said, tapping the hallway wall. "Some renovations and you could fetch a fantastic offer." I looked at Emily. She avoided my eyes. After they left, I sat in Marjorie's old rocking chair for hours. I didn't eat. Didn't even turn on the lights. Just sat in the quiet, listening to the house breathe. That was the first time I felt it, that uneasy twist in my gut. The feeling that something sacred was being measured, weighed, and marked with a price tag. Still, I didn't say anything. I told myself she was just being ambitious. That maybe she wanted what was best for me, just didn't know how to say it. But things kept piling up. She stopped calling me Dad. Started calling me Pops. Said it in a cutesy, dismissive tone, like I was a relic from another era. She rearranged the living room without asking, said it would be more open and buyer-friendly. When I moved the furniture back the next day, she laughed and said, "You're so stuck in your ways." And the worst part? When I told her about the arthritis getting worse in my hands, how some mornings I couldn't even hold a coffee mug, she nodded and said, "Yeah, we need to start making long-term decisions." We. Not me. Then came the day I caught her photographing the house. The porch, the kitchen, the bedrooms. I stepped outside and asked her what she was doing. "Just getting some inspiration," she said. But she wouldn't meet my eyes. Later, I found a document in the trash can. A draft listing. My address. Descriptions of my home. Charming fixer-upper with historic character. Ideal for development. My stomach turned. When I asked her, she waved it off. Just a mock-up for work. Relax, Pops. But the mock-up had a suggested price. $612,000. And her email in the contact field. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing her, not as my little girl, not even as the woman I once knew, but as a stranger in a tailored suit, slicing my memories into market value. Still, I didn't confront her. I told myself maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it was just how the world worked now. I was old-fashioned. Maybe this was her way of showing love, just dressed differently. I told myself a lot of things. But deep down, a voice had started whispering. "She's not just thinking about your future. She's thinking about your house." And that voice, that quiet, painful voice, was getting louder by the day. It happened on a Sunday. I remember because I had just come back from church. I still wore my pressed shirt and tie, the one Marjorie bought me for our 25th anniversary. I walked into my own kitchen and there they were, Emily, David from Ridgepoint, and some young couple with a baby carrier. Emily was giving them a tour. "Oh, this is original woodwork," she said, running her hand along the stair banister I carved myself. "A real gem. They don't build homes like this anymore." David chimed in, and with a bit of updating, this could be a prime flip opportunity. Huge potential return. The couple smiled politely, murmuring about paint colors. The baby made a soft cooing sound. I just stood there. My keys still in my hand. My church bulletin tucked under my arm. Emily saw me, but didn't even flinch. "Oh, Dad, you're back early." "Early for what?" I asked, louder than I meant to. My voice echoed off the kitchen tile. David stepped forward. "Mr. Blake, so nice to see you again. We were just wrapping up." "Wrapping up what?" I said, cutting him off. "What are you doing in my house?" Emily sighed like she was explaining something to a child. "I told you, I'm helping you make transitions. You need to think about the future. This house is too much for you, Dad." She turned to the couple. "Just give us a moment." They left quickly, murmuring awkward apologies. When the front door clicked shut, I set my keys down and looked her square in the face. "You brought strangers into my home without asking." "It's not just your home anymore," she said softly, like that would cushion the blow. My chest tightened. "What did you just say?" She looked down. "After your last hospital visit, I filed for power of attorney. You signed the forms at the rehab center. Remember? I said it was to help pay your bills." I remembered signing something, my hands trembling, my mind still fogged from the medication. I thought it was about insurance. I never imagined. "You tricked me," I whispered. My voice was so quiet it barely carried. "No," she snapped, her voice sharpening. "I protected you. You don't know how vulnerable you are, how quickly things can spiral. I had to act. Before you lost everything. I never asked you to save me," I said. "I just wanted my daughter." She stared at me, arms crossed. "I am your daughter. And I'm doing what you never could, thinking smart. This place is just wood and nails now. You're stuck in the past. I looked around. At the hallway where Emily used to race on her tricycle. At the scuffed baseboard she chipped with her toy wagon. At the kitchen where Marjorie used to dance while the kettle whistled. Get out, I said. My voice didn't shake this time. She blinked. What? You, David, everyone. Out. Now. You're being irrational. I said out. For a moment, she didn't move. Then David gently touched her elbow. Come on, Emily. Let's give him space. They left. I didn't watch them go. I stood in the center of the room for a long time, unable to sit, unable to think. The silence was deafening. Later that evening, I got a call from my neighbor, Mrs. Kessler. Sweet old woman with a sharp eye and a tighter community grapevine. I saw Emily leaving with a "for sale" sign in her trunk, she said. Everything okay, Leonard? I wanted to lie. Say yes. Say it was just a misunderstanding. But the words didn't come. Because for the first time in my life, I realized something unthinkable. My own daughter didn't see my home as sacred. She saw it as a number on a spreadsheet. A transaction. A step on a career ladder. And the worst part? She didn't feel guilty about it. I couldn't sleep that night. The walls felt closer somehow, like the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for me to speak. But I couldn't. Not to anyone. Not yet. The next morning, I sat at the breakfast table staring at a cold cup of coffee. My hands trembled when I reached for it. The familiar warmth of the mug, once comforting, now felt fragile in my grip, like everything else in my life. I opened the mail. A stack of white envelopes, most of it junk. Then I saw one with my name on it, but the return address read Bright Springs Senior Living Facility. I opened it slowly. Inside was a glossy brochure with smiling gray-haired people playing bingo, holding hands on walking trails. A sticky note was attached. Just looking ahead. Love, Emily. No call. No conversation. Just a brochure. That's when I knew it wasn't just concern, it was a plan. Quiet, methodical, and utterly cold. She wasn't preparing to help me live. She was preparing to make me disappear. I sat there for a long time, staring at the glossy images of strangers smiling in sterilized comfort. A place with linen service, curated meals, scheduled activities, and no history. No roots. No Marjorie. A place where people go to wait. That afternoon, I found an old box in the closet, one I hadn't opened since Marjorie passed. Inside were letters, photos, her hospital bills, and the deed to the house. I hadn't looked at it in years, but I knew every word. Her name was still there, under mine. A signature in fading ink, written with a hand that had comforted me through war, grief, and joy. I traced it with my finger, and for the first time in weeks, I let myself cry. Later that week, I overheard Emily on the phone. She thought I was asleep in the living room, but the kitchen door was cracked just enough. No, he's being stubborn, she whispered. Yes, the paperwork's already halfway done. I just need him out of the house for a couple more weeks. Once the rehab forms go through, we can list. A pause. No, he doesn't suspect a thing. I held my breath. Every word was a dagger. She was selling the house behind my back. I backed away from the door, careful not to creak the floorboards. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of knowing I'd heard. That night, I went to the garage. Not to look for tools or old photographs, but for the fireproof box where I kept my legal files. My will. Marjorie and I had drawn it up after her second surgery. We'd kept it simple back then, everything to Emily. She was our only child. Who else would we trust? But now that very trust had become a weapon. I took out the document and stared at it under the dusty light bulb. Her name. Her inheritance. Her power. All given freely, with love. And now being used to push me out of the very home I built for her. I knew what I had to do. But before I made a move, I started watching. Carefully. Quietly. Like a man hunting the truth in his own home. I noticed how she'd started putting important papers in a new folder labeled Transition. How she logged into my online bank account using a saved password I never gave her. How she smiled at me more often now, not warmly, but like someone patting a dog on the head before they closed the gate behind it. It was all so clear. One afternoon, I found a voicemail from her on my phone, left while I was out in the garden. "Hey, Dad. Just wanted to check in and remind you about that appointment on Friday. Remember? With the long-term care advisor. We'll grab lunch after. Love you." I never made that appointment. She did. It wasn't care. It was containment. I sat under the old oak tree in the backyard for hours that day. The same one Emily used to climb as a girl, her legs swinging wild and fearless. I remembered how I'd stand at the bottom, arms out, just in case. "I'll catch you if you fall," I used to say. She believed me. Now, I was the one falling. And no one stood below. That night, I dreamt of Marjorie. She was in the kitchen, humming like she always did, wearing that blue apron with the gravy stain that never came out. "You gave her everything," she said gently, turning to me with flour-dusted hands. "And now it's time to take something back." I woke up with a start. My chest ached, but not from my heart, from memory. I made a decision. I would protect what was left of my life. Not out of spite. Not even out of revenge. But out of love, for Marjorie, for the man I used to be, and for the house that still held all our echoes. Emily may have been planning behind my back. But now, I was watching. And I wasn't going anywhere quietly. Have you ever felt betrayed by your own family? Let us know in the comments. Do you think the father is right to fight back? Comment and don't forget to like and subscribe for more true life stories. I waited for the right moment. Not out of fear, not anymore, but because I wanted the truth to hit when it counted. Emily thought she held all the cards. That I was just a tired old man, too slow to notice what she was doing. She forgot who raised her. The breaking point came one afternoon while she was reorganizing the guest room. She didn't know I'd been watching, that I saw the empty boxes and the donation piles. She'd already moved half my belongings into the garage, like I was already gone. "Emily," I said from the doorway. "We need to talk." She didn't look up. "Can it wait, Dad? I'm sorting through stuff. You have so much you don't use anymore." "No. It can't." She turned, finally seeing the set of my jaw, the look in my eyes that I hadn't worn since her teenage years, when curfew wasn't a suggestion and respect wasn't optional. "What's going on?" she asked, hands on hips like I was a tenant late on rent. "I heard you on the phone," I said. She blinked. "What?" "In the kitchen. A week ago. You said I don't suspect a thing. That once rehab papers go through, you can list the house." She hesitated. Just for a second. But it was enough. Her mouth opened, then closed. Then came the lie. "You misheard me. That was about work. One of my clients." "Don't lie to me," I said, quietly. She scoffed, crossed her arms. "Dad, you've been confused lately. You've been forgetting things. It's not your fault. But I can't let you live like this." "Like what?" I stepped into the room. In my home? Among memories I built? With my name still on the deed? Her face twisted. We signed the power of attorney. No, I said. You brought me a stack of papers in a rehab center when I was still on morphine. You told me it was for insurance. I had to. You wouldn't listen, and you were in no shape to handle finances. I nodded slowly, the weight of her words sinking in. You're right. I didn't listen. Because I didn't think I had to. I trusted you. We stood in silence. The only sound was the distant hum of the refrigerator. Are you recording me or something? She finally muttered. Trying to build some case? I didn't answer. That was the moment her expression changed, not to remorse, but to fear. Not of me, but of losing control. You don't understand how hard this is for me, she snapped. I have to juggle my job, my kids, my marriage. And I never juggled? I said, sharper than I intended. You think I didn't work 18-hour days so you could go to dance classes? That I didn't take side jobs to pay for your braces? That your mother and I didn't eat leftovers so you could have new school clothes? Her lips trembled, but she didn't speak. You're tired, Dad, she said finally, quieter now. You shouldn't be alone in this house. It's too much. You don't get to decide that, I said. Not like this. Not by tricking me, not by planning behind my back. She turned away, and I saw her wipe her cheek. I don't know if it was a tear or just frustration. I left the room before I said anything I'd regret. That night, as I sat on the porch watching the sun go down, Mrs. Kessler came by again. She brought me banana bread and a look that said more than words ever could. You okay, Leonard? I nodded. Hanging in there. She sat beside me. Your daughter's been around a lot lately. Too much, I muttered. She mean well? I looked at her, and for once, I didn't pretend. She wants to sell the house. Sent me a brochure for a senior home without asking. Mrs. Kessler didn't gasp. Didn't judge. She just reached over and patted my hand. Happened to my brother, she said softly. His son moved him out while he was in the hospital. Said it was for his safety. He never saw his backyard again. That stuck with me. I spent the next few days going for walks. Not to clear my head, but to remind myself of who I was. A man who built this home with sweat and calluses. A man who buried his wife in the soil she planted tulips in. A man who had every right to decide when it was time to go. I talked to an old army buddy, Harold, who now volunteered at the courthouse downtown. He didn't ask why I needed advice on revoking power of attorney. He just gave me the number of someone who could help. You don't owe her silence, he said. You owe yourself peace. It was the first time in weeks I felt seen. I started documenting everything. Emails. Voicemails. That brochure. Even the boxes in the guest room. Quietly, I built a file. Because I knew the storm was coming. And when it did, I wouldn't yell. I'd simply be ready. The lawyer's office was tucked between a dentist and a failing antique shop downtown. It smelled like old books and lemon oil, a scent that took me back to the early days when Marjorie and I signed the mortgage on our first home. I sat across from Mr. Brenner, a family friend from years back. We weren't close anymore, but he still remembered me. He asked about Marjorie, and I told him she'd been gone 7 years now. He placed a hand on mine and gave a soft nod. She was a good woman, he said. The best, I whispered. Then we got to business. I need to update my will, I said. And I need to make sure no one, not even my daughter, can twist it after I'm gone. He didn't flinch. Tell me everything. So I did. I told him about the fake concern. The secret calls. The power of attorney papers slipped in under the fog of medication. The boxes. The plans. The lies. He listened without interruption, just nodding occasionally as he scribbled notes. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. "I've seen it before," he said. "Not always this calculated, but close. You're not crazy. And you're not alone." His words hit me harder than I expected. "What do I do?" I asked. "I don't want to be vengeful. But I can't let her take everything." "You don't have to be vengeful," he said. "You just have to be smart." We spent hours drafting a new version of the will. Everything was scrutinized, not just who would inherit, but how. He introduced me to something called a no contest clause. If Emily tries to contest this in court, he explained, she'll get nothing. Everything will go to a charity of your choice. I paused. What kind of charity? Veterans assistance. Women's shelters. Or, maybe a scholarship fund in Marjorie's name? That one stopped me. I remembered how Marjorie used to tutor kids from the neighborhood. How she'd give up entire Saturdays helping them with college applications, reading essays out loud at the kitchen table. "Let's do that," I said. "A scholarship. For kids who don't have anyone fighting for them." He smiled. Then came the harder part. I had to decide who, if anyone, still deserved part of what I built. I thought of Emily's children, my grandchildren. I didn't see them much anymore. She used to bring them around every week. Then once a month. Then holidays only. Now? Maybe a birthday card, if I was lucky. Still, they were kids. Maybe not part of the scheme. Maybe just along for the ride. "I want a trust set up for the grandchildren," I told Mr. Brenner. "Something they can access when they're older, college, or starting a business. But only if they come visit me before I go." "Fair," he said. "And Emily?" I hesitated. My pen hovered over the document. Her name was there from the original draft, still typed in block letters like it had weight. I crossed it out. "She gets nothing. Not even the house." Mr. Brenner nodded. "We can transfer the deed into a trust, too. That way she can't sell it, not even after you're gone." A weight lifted from my chest. It wasn't joy, nothing about this felt joyful, but it was relief. Quiet, steady relief. As we wrapped up, he handed me the final draft. I held it in both hands. The paper felt heavier than it should have. Maybe because it held everything I'd spent my life building. "You sure about this?" he asked gently. I nodded. She made her choices. Now I'm making mine. Outside, the wind had picked up. Autumn leaves skittered across the sidewalk, chasing each other like schoolchildren. I stood there for a long while, watching people rush past. No one looked twice at the old man holding a manila envelope close to his chest. And I preferred it that way. Back home, I opened the drawer in the old oak desk, the one Marjorie used to keep her recipes in. I slid the will inside, under her handwritten apple pie instructions. It felt right. Then I called Harold. "You did it?" he asked. "I did. Proud of you." We didn't say much else. Men like us didn't need to. That night, I sat on the porch and watched the house breathe. I could almost hear Marjorie's voice in the rustle of the curtains. Smell her perfume in the cushions. I whispered into the dark, "I protected it, Marge. I protected us." Because that's what this had always been about. Not revenge. Not bitterness. Just dignity. It happened on a Tuesday, the kind of dull, overcast day that never announces disaster. I just finished folding the last of my laundry when I heard the front door open without a knock. Emily never knocked anymore. She came in talking loudly on the phone, carrying a manila folder and moving like she owned the place. "No, he won't be an issue," she said into her phone. "The listing goes up next week. I already talked to the agent. She saw me sitting at the kitchen table and froze. I stood up slowly. "What listing?" She covered the phone and said, "Just the contractor. For the appraisal." "The what?" She ended the call and forced a smile. "Dad, I was going to tell you, but..." "But you didn't," I said, my voice low and steady. "You were going to list the house. Without telling me." She set the folder down on the counter and crossed her arms. "You're making this harder than it needs to be. I already talked to a specialist. They said assisted living would be safer for someone your age. With your history." "You mean the stroke," I said. "The one I recovered from. The one I worked through, alone, while you were busy rearranging my life." "You're being dramatic," she muttered. "I'm doing what's best for everyone." "No," I said. "You're doing what's best for you." I walked over to the folder and opened it. Real estate documents. Photo estimates. A schedule for showings. Showings. Strangers were going to walk through my home. Step on the floorboards I laid with my bare hands. Judge the paint Marjorie picked out. Maybe even suggest modernizing her kitchen, ripping out the soul of the house for resale value. "I never gave you permission," I said. "And this house is not yours to sell." She rolled her eyes. "We have power of attorney. It's legal." "Not anymore," I said, calmly. "I revoked it 2 weeks ago." That stopped her. You what?" "I met with Mr. Brenner. Signed the paperwork. Everything's filed." She looked like someone had pulled the floor out from under her. "That's not possible. You weren't in a state of..." "Don't you dare," I said. "Don't you dare stand in my kitchen and tell me I'm not of sound mind. I spent the last 6 months proving I can walk, speak, write, and think. And I've done it without you." Her voice trembled. "You don't know what it's like to juggle everything. I have a family, Dad. A mortgage. Kids with needs. This house is just sitting here while you rot away in it. Then why are you so desperate to get rid of it?" I asked. "Because you love me? Or because it's worth more than your car, your credit card debt, and your dignity combined?" She went silent. The truth had landed. Finally. I picked up the folder and handed it back to her. "Get out. Dad. Take your plans, your brochures, your fake concern, and leave." She stared at me. For a long time. Then, without another word, she grabbed her things and stormed out. The silence afterward was deafening. I walked through the house slowly, like I was seeing it all for the first time again. The photos on the wall. Marjorie's favorite teacup in the cabinet. My old army coat still hanging in the hall closet. Every detail held meaning. I ended in the living room and sat in her old rocking chair. And for the first time in a long time, I cried. Not because I was sad. Because I was done. Done hoping she'd change. Done pretending she cared. Done handing out chances like candy to someone who saw me as a problem to be managed. That night, I gathered every document I had, the new will, the deed, the revocation papers, and placed them neatly in a locked file box by my bed. I slept with the key under my pillow. The next morning, I called Harold. "It's time," I said. "You sure?" I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "I want everyone to hear it. No more secrets." "Then let's make it loud." It was a birthday party, not mine, of course. Emily's husband, Craig, was turning 50, and she decided to rent out the country club ballroom for the occasion. Formal invites went out, but I wasn't on the list. Didn't matter. I put on my best gray blazer, the one Marjorie had tailored for our 40th anniversary, and polished my shoes until they gleamed. I tucked the file box under my arm and headed out. The parking lot was full. Laughter echoed from the entrance. Through the tall windows, I saw balloons, a live band, and tables stacked with shrimp cocktail and wine glasses. My daughter knew how to throw a party, especially when she thought she was celebrating her victory lap. I walked in, past the front desk, past the surprised look of the hostess, and straight toward the main hall. Heads turned. I heard whispers. Is that? Oh my God, is that her dad? Emily spotted me near the entrance. Her eyes widened like she'd seen a ghost. Dad? What are you? I raised my hand. Calm. Focused. Excuse me, everyone. The microphone was on a stand near the band. I walked up, placed my file box on the table beside it, and took the mic in my hand. I won't take much of your time, I said, voice steady but loud. I just want to say a few words. About family. About truth. Silence fell like a curtain. Forks paused mid-air. Wine glasses froze mid-sip. Emily walked quickly toward me, whispering harshly, "What are you doing? Stop this." I ignored her. For those of you who don't know, I had a stroke earlier this year. My daughter Emily stepped in to help. She moved me out of my home, placed me in a facility, and used her legal access to begin selling the house my wife and I built together. Gasps. Murmurs. A few people shifted in their seats. I recovered. Quietly. Slowly. And I saw what was happening. What she was planning. I realized that love can turn into leverage, if you're not careful. I opened the file box, pulled out the documents, and held them up. This is my new will. This is the deed, now held in a living trust. And this is the revoked power of attorney. Everything has been witnessed, notarized, and filed with my lawyer. I turned to face her. You won't be selling my home, Emily. You won't be inheriting it either. She stepped forward, face flushed. Dad, please. You don't understand. I understand perfectly, I said. You saw me as weak. You tried to cash in before I was even gone. Someone from her table stood, a friend, maybe a coworker, and said, "Is this true, Emily?" She didn't answer. I'm not here to shame you, I said, scanning the room again. I'm here to free myself. For too long, I let love blind me. I made excuses. I thought I was protecting my family, but I was enabling a lie. I returned the mic to its stand and picked up my documents. From this day forward, my support, my home, and my legacy will go to those who deserve it. Not those who expect it. I walked past her slowly. She didn't move. Just stared straight ahead, jaw clenched, mascara threatening to run. Outside, the wind had picked up again. I didn't drive home right away. I stopped at the park near Marjorie's old rose garden bench. I sat with the file box in my lap and let the sun warm my face. The air felt lighter than it had in months. I wasn't angry anymore. I was awake. Have you ever felt betrayed by your own family? Let us know in the comments. Do you think the father made the right choice? Comment and don't forget to like and subscribe for more true life stories. The silence after that night was louder than the confrontation itself. Emily didn't call. Didn't text. Not even a passive-aggressive voicemail. Just, nothing. Her absence echoed in the house louder than her footsteps ever did. But the town wasn't quiet. I went to the grocery store 2 days later and got a strange mix of reactions. The cashier paused, blinked, then gave me my change with both hands and a soft, "Good for you, Mr. Harlan." The butcher smiled too long. A woman from the church committee offered me a pie she just happened to bake too much of. Small towns may be slow to react, but they remember everything. I didn't gloat. I didn't explain. I just nodded and kept moving. At home, the silence settled like dust. I moved through each room deliberately, cleaning shelves I hadn't touched in years. I found Marjorie's gardening gloves still folded by the back door. I slipped my hand inside one and held it there, like I might feel her warmth again. I ate my dinners at the table, alone now, but with a small photo of her beside me. I'd talk to it sometimes. Just a few words. A memory. A smile. Remember when Emily broke the window with her softball and swore it was the neighbor's kid? I'd laugh. But the laughter would fade too quickly. And what followed was always the quiet ache, the kind that sits behind your ribs and waits. 3 days after the party, Harold stopped by. He brought cinnamon rolls from that place in town we used to visit after church. "You did it," he said, setting the box down on the table like it was a trophy. "You really stood up to her." "I didn't want to," I said, biting into one of the rolls. "But I needed to." He nodded. "People are talking. You're a legend now." I raised an eyebrow. "You showed up like a general going into battle. Took the mic, gave your speech, walked out like a man with nothing left to lose." "I had everything to lose," I said quietly. "My peace. My memories. Her house." Harold didn't ask who her was. He never had to. The next morning, I walked down to the lake. The path was still the same, cracked stone, rustling weeds, birdsong over the water. I took my time. A young couple passed me on the trail with a stroller. The father smiled and nodded. "Good morning, sir." "Morning," I replied. I sat on the bench Marjorie and I used to frequent after Sunday lunch. Back then, we'd split a thermos of tea and talk about everything and nothing. Now, I sat there alone, but not lonely. Not really. I pulled out the little notebook I'd started keeping. A daily list of what I was thankful for. August 10th, I wrote. A quiet house. Clear skies. Cinnamon rolls. That bench by the lake. Healing didn't come in grand gestures. It came in these small, unnoticed moments. 2 weeks after the party, a knock came at the door. It was Amelia, my oldest granddaughter. She stood on the porch in jeans and a hoodie, backpack slung over one shoulder. Her face looked puffy, like she'd been crying. "Hi, Grandpa," she said softly. "Hi, sweetheart," I said, stepping aside. "Come in." She walked in, looked around like she hadn't seen the place in years, even though she'd grown up running through these halls. "I heard what happened," she said, sitting on the couch. "Mom's not handling it well." I figured. I just wanted to say, "I'm sorry." I sat across from her. For what? For not seeing it. For not doing anything sooner. For letting her talk about you like you were already gone. I swallowed hard. "You didn't do anything wrong," I said. "You were caught in a storm I should have seen coming years ago." She looked down at her hands. "I miss Grandma." "So do I," said. "Every single day." We talked for over an hour. About school, about her part-time job, about how she still remembered Marjorie's lemon cake and how I used to sneak her slices before dinner. Before she left, she hugged me. Tight. Real. "I don't want to lose you too," she whispered. "You won't," I promised. As she walked back to her car, I stood by the window, watching. The house didn't feel quite as quiet that night. It had hope in it again. It started with a letter from the local Veterans Center. Just a short envelope, beige with blue trim. I almost tossed it in the recycling with the grocery flyers, but something about the handwriting caught my eye. Neat. Careful. Almost like Marjorie's used to be. "Dear Mr. Harlan, we heard about your recent experience through one of our volunteers and wanted to reach out. We're currently expanding our transitional housing program for senior veterans and low-income families. If you'd ever consider opening your home, even a room, we'd love to talk. I sat at the kitchen table with the letter in my hand and read it 3 times. My home. I looked around. The living room was quiet, dust floating in the sunlight. The mantel still had our wedding photo on it. There were empty bedrooms upstairs, the ones Emily wanted to stage and sell. I stood, walked up the stairs, and opened the doors one by one. The guest room still smelled faintly of cedar from the old wardrobe. The sewing room. Marjorie's things boxed up, but her small rocking chair still by the window. And the room at the end, Emily's old bedroom. Bare now, just sunlight and silence. I stood in the doorway for a long while. Maybe it was time to fill this house again, not with entitlement and schemes, but with purpose. I called the number on the letter the next morning. A woman named Teresa answered. Gentle voice. Midwestern accent. We don't need much, Mr. Harlan, she said. Even one room helps. A short-term stay while someone gets back on their feet. We cover insurance, background checks, support visits. And what about meals? I still cook, nothing fancy, but... She laughed. That's more than most. We'd love that. By the end of the week, I'd agreed to host my first guest. His name was Raymond. Vietnam vet. 68, lean, walked with a limp. Lost his wife to cancer 2 years ago, then his job a few months after that. His apartment complex raised rent, and he couldn't keep up. He arrived on a Tuesday with one duffel bag and a folded American flag under his arm. Morning, sir, he said, extending a hand. I'm not a sir, I replied, shaking it firmly. I'm Harlan. Welcome home. He blinked. Home? I nodded. At least for now. We settled into a rhythm quickly. He helped me fix the porch screen. I showed him how to make Marjorie's split pea soup. At night, we sat on the back porch in silence, just watching the stars come out. The house began to breathe again. Soon after, Teresa called again. We've got another referral. A young mother, if you're willing. Her name was Lonnie. 26. 2-year-old daughter named Maya. Her partner left without warning, and she'd been couch hopping ever since. They moved into the upstairs sewing room. Lonnie cried the first night, standing in the kitchen as I poured her a cup of tea. I'm not used to kindness, she said. Well, I said, get used to it. There's a whole pot brewing. Maya called me Pops after 3 days. The house wasn't quiet anymore, it was full of life. Sounds of laughter, toddler footsteps, and occasional creaks from Raymond's cane as he moved about. I found myself smiling without realizing it. One afternoon, I was sorting through old boxes in the attic when I came across a stack of Marjorie's notes, blue ink on yellow legal pads. Her old dream sketches. Community garden behind the porch, maybe involve the school kids? Could we turn the upstairs into guest rooms? Maybe shelter, maybe writers? She'd had the same vision. Long before Emily's betrayal. Before the hospital. Before the will. I sat on the floor, sunlight beaming through the dusty window, and read her handwriting like scripture. That night, I made a list. Not a grocery list. Not a to-do list. A legacy list. By the next week, I'd filed paperwork to register the house as a temporary transition site for the county's community housing program. A lawyer friend of Harold's helped me through it all. He even suggested a small non-profit structure, something that would live beyond me. We named it Marjorie's House. Even writing the name gave me a lump in my throat. Emily found out through the grapevine. I know because Amelia called me again. She saw the flyer at the town hall, she said. She didn't say anything, but I could tell she was stunned. Let her be, I replied. You okay, Grandpa? I looked out the window. Raymond was teaching Maya how to tie her shoes on the porch. Lonnie was tending to the small tomato garden we'd just started. "I'm better than okay," I said. This house was no longer a prize to be fought over. It wasn't just wood, nails, and square footage. It was purpose. It was healing. It was home, again. The tomatoes came in early. Lonnie brought the first red one inside like it was gold. "I didn't think I had a green thumb," she said, holding it up. I took it gently and smiled. "You've got something better, patience." Maya clapped like we just won an award. Raymond insisted we slice it and eat it with salt and pepper right away. That evening, we sat around the table, Raymond at one end, Lonnie beside Maya, me at the head. It wasn't a dinner full of blood ties. But it was full of warmth, conversation, and stories. And that was enough. That was family. It happened slowly, but steadily. Raymond began helping other veterans apply for benefits. He used the desk in the study and kept stacks of paperwork organized better than I ever could. "I wasn't much for clerical work in Vietnam," he joked, "but I can fill a damn good form now." Lonnie signed up for night classes. Business administration. I watched her sit at the kitchen table long after Maya had gone to bed, highlighting pages with quiet determination. I'd wake up early some mornings and find her asleep with her head on the books. So I'd make her coffee and let her sleep in. Neighbors began stopping by again. Evelyn from the quilting circle dropped off a patchwork blanket. "For the little one," she said. I remember Marjorie wrapping Emily in one just like it. Even Pastor Rick came by with his teenage son. "He needs some volunteer hours," he explained. "But I think he'll learn more here than he will sweeping the church steps." They helped us repaint the shed. We added flower boxes to the porch. Painted the mailbox. Hung wind chimes that tinkled gently every afternoon. The house, once stripped bare of joy, began to hum with quiet beauty again. Not every moment was easy. Maya had a fever one night and Lonnie panicked, crying on the phone to the nurse while I sat with a cool cloth on the child's head. Raymond held the car keys in case we needed to drive. But we made it through. Together. That word meant something new now. Not forced smiles around a Thanksgiving table. Not fake laughter over birthday cake while gossip brewed beneath the surface. No. Together meant arms steady under weight. Words spoken honestly. Tears wiped without judgment. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low and the wind carried the scent of garden soil, I found myself sitting on the back porch with Amelia again. She visited every other weekend now. Sometimes with groceries, sometimes just herself. "This place feels different," she said, sipping iced tea. "It is different," I said. "It's real now." She looked over at Raymond, who was reading on the swing, and at Lonnie helping Maya draw on the driveway with chalk. "They're not even blood," she said. "And yet." "They show up," I replied. We sat in silence for a bit. "I used to think family was just who you're born to," she said. "Now I think it's who shows up when you're sick. Who remembers how you take your tea. Who helps you paint flower boxes when no one's looking." I reached over and squeezed her hand. That's exactly it. Emily hadn't reached out. Not once. Not a letter. Not a phone call. She didn't need to. Her silence said enough. And surprisingly, I didn't ache for it anymore. One day, I pulled out the old photo albums. The ones Emily once called junk. I laid them out on the living room floor, invited everyone to sit. We flipped through memories, my wedding day, baby photos of Emily, fishing trips, family picnics. Marjorie's smile in every frame. Raymond pointed to a picture of me holding Emily on my shoulders. "You look like you'd never drop her," he said. "I never did," I replied. She just climbed down and walked away. Everyone was quiet for a beat. Then Lonnie placed a photo of Marjorie in the center. She built this, she said softly. No, I said. We built it. And now, we're rebuilding it. Maya drew a heart around the photo with her chalk crayons. I didn't stop her. Weeks passed. Seasons began to shift. The house stayed full, not always with people, but with something deeper: movement, progress, love. We added a plaque by the front door: Marjorie's house, a place of new beginnings. One morning, I stood outside with my coffee, watching a robin land on the porch rail. The sky was pink with dawn. Raymond came out, rubbing his eyes. Couldn't sleep either. Didn't want to, I said. Didn't want to miss this. What's next for the place? He asked. Maybe a community kitchen, I said. Or a garden club. Who knows? He smiled. Whatever it is, you won't be doing it alone. And I knew he meant it. Not because he had to. But because real family doesn't leave when the work gets hard. They stay. They build. I was out back trimming the lavender bush when I heard the gravel crunch beneath unfamiliar tires. We didn't get many surprise visitors anymore. Most folks called first. Most knew this house wasn't open for drama. I walked around to the front and froze. Emily. Standing on the porch with her arms crossed, sunglasses perched on her head, and a stiff look that was all too familiar. It had been nearly a year since the hospital. Since the will. Since she tried to sell the house out from under me like it was some used car she was tired of parking. I walked up the path slowly. You lost, Emily? She didn't smile. Didn't step forward. I just wanted to see the house. It's not the house anymore, I said, wiping my hands on my jeans. It's Marjorie's house now. You remember her, don't you? Her jaw clenched, but she nodded. I didn't invite her in. Just stood there and waited. I heard about what you're doing, she said finally. The veterans. The young families. I figured you had, I said. Town's not that big. She shifted her weight. I thought it was just a phase. Some stubborn stunt. But people talk. They say this place is changing lives. I shrugged. It changed mine first. She looked past me, toward the porch swing where Raymond's old boots rested beside a potted basil plant. Lonnie's voice echoed faintly from inside. She was teaching Maya the alphabet with little paper cards. Can I come in? She asked, quieter now. I thought about it. Then shook my head. No, Emily. Not today. Her face fell, just slightly. She didn't argue. I was angry, she said. About the will. About the house. About Mom. You weren't angry, I replied. You were entitled. There's a difference. She opened her mouth, then shut it again. I came to say. I'm sorry, she said at last. I shouldn't have done what I did. I shouldn't have. Treated me like I was already dead. I finished for her. She looked away. I thought maybe if I took control, I could. I don't know. Fix things. Make things easier. Easier for you, I said. Not for me. Not for anyone else. You wanted the land, the money, the title. Not the burden of a father who still remembered how to breathe. She blinked hard. I didn't come here to fight. And I didn't ask you to come at all. Silence hung between us. The wind rustled the wind chimes, a soft metallic sigh in the tension. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out a photo. It was me and her, at a 4th of July parade. She was about 9. Sitting on my shoulders, waving a little flag. I had ice cream on my shirt and the biggest smile on my face. I found this in one of Mom's old boxes, she said, holding it out. I didn't take it. You keep it, I said. Looks like you might need a reminder. She lowered her hand. I'm pregnant. The words came out fast, unexpected. I stared. She looked up at me, eyes suddenly softer. I don't expect anything. I thought maybe you'd want to know. I stood still for a long moment. Congratulations, I said, finally. I hope you raised them better than you tried to control me. She nodded. I'm trying to be better. I hope you are. For their sake. She turned to leave. Emily, I called out. She looked back. I'll always remember the little girl on my shoulders, I said. But I can't forget the woman who tried to erase everything we built. You'll have to live with both. She swallowed. I know. Then she walked back to her car and drove away. I didn't cry. I didn't break. I simply stood there, watching the dust settle as the wind picked up. Later that evening, Amelia stopped by. I told her what happened. She came, she asked, eyes wide. Did you talk? I nodded. She said sorry. I didn't invite her in. Amelia nodded slowly. That's fair. I hope she means it, I said. But I'm not the man who raised her anymore. I'm the man who built this. She squeezed my shoulder. And we're glad you did. We walked back to the porch as the sun dipped below the trees. Raymond handed me a cup of coffee. Lonnie waved from the kitchen. Maya ran up and hugged my leg. Pops, she said, grinning. I picked her up and held her close. No, blood wasn't everything. Family is who shows up. Who stays. Who builds with you. Have you ever had a family member come back with an apology? Do you believe in second chances? Tell us in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more emotional true-life stories. The day of the ribbon cutting, I wore Marjorie's favorite cardigan. Light blue, with the pearl buttons she insisted on sewing back herself every time one popped loose. It smelled faintly of cedar and lavender from her old dresser drawer, and when I slipped it on, it was like she wrapped her arms around me one last time. The sign above the porch read clearly now. Marjorie's house, a place of new beginnings. There were chairs set up on the lawn. Balloons tied to the picket fence. Fold-out tables covered in lemonade, cookies, and photo displays. A handful of neighbors, veterans, local families, even Pastor Rick stood among them, smiling kindly. Lonnie was fussing with the speaker cables. Raymond adjusted the flagpole. Maya spun in a circle in her flower dress, giggling as her curls caught the sunlight. I stood on the porch, hands trembling slightly, holding the oversized scissors they insisted I use for the ceremony. When I looked out over the gathering, I didn't see strangers. I saw roots. I saw people who had once come to this house in broken pieces and found ways to stitch themselves together again. I took a deep breath. Thank you all for coming, I said, voice cracking a little through the mic. There was a hush. This house has been through a lot, I continued. Storms, grief, arguments. But more than anything, love. I looked up at the sign again. My voice steadied. My wife, Marjorie, believed in people. She believed that no one was too lost to be found. That even the worst wounds could be healed with time, kindness, and hot tea. Laughter rippled through the crowd. She also believed that family isn't just who shares your blood, it's who shows up. Who stays. Who listens. I paused, swallowing hard. There was a time I thought this house would die with me. That its walls would be sold off, its memories erased. But then. I looked at Lonnie, at Raymond, at Amelia and the other neighbors who had helped us repaint every board, replant every garden bed. People showed up. And we began again. The scissors trembled in my grip. So today, we don't just open a building. We open a future. For single mothers, veterans, runaways, the lonely, the tired, anyone who needs a second chance. Applause. Not wild. Just warm. The kind that wrapped around you and said, "We see you." I stepped forward, snipped the ribbon, and the crowd cheered. Raymond played his harmonica. Lonnie held back tears. Maya tried to eat a cookie bigger than her face. And just like that, it was real. The house that nearly became a ghost was alive again. That night, after everyone had gone home and the lights inside were dim, I sat on the porch swing alone. A soft breeze drifted through the chimes. Crickets chirped in the grass. Fireflies blinked across the lawn. I closed my eyes. "Marjorie," I whispered. "We did it." I don't know if she heard me. But I felt her. In the warmth of the wood beneath me. In the scent of lavender on my sleeve. In the laughter still echoing faintly through the open windows. A hand touched my shoulder. Amelia. She sat down beside me, resting her head gently against my arm. "She'd be proud," she said softly. "I hope so," I replied. We watched the stars for a while. "Emily called," Amelia said after a long silence. I turned my head. "She had the baby," she said. "A boy. She named him John." My chest tightened. "After me?" Amelia nodded. She didn't say much more. "But, maybe one day she'll bring him here." I didn't answer. Maybe she would. Maybe she wouldn't. But the house would still be here. Marjorie's house would still be open. Still listening. Still healing. I stood up, slowly, my joints protesting just a little. "I think it's time to turn in," I said. Amelia hugged me gently and followed me inside. The living room smelled like old books and fresh cookies. The kind of scent that makes you believe tomorrow will be better than today. As I climbed the stairs to my room, I passed the gallery wall we'd built together. Photos of every person who'd ever lived here since it reopened. Not just faces, stories. At the top of the stairs, I stopped at the last photo. Marjorie, holding baby Emily in front of the very same porch I'd stood on earlier. I touched the glass. "Thank you," I whispered. Because in the end, this was never just about losing a house. It was about remembering how to build again, from the ground up. Not with hammers and nails. But with grace. With truth. And with the quiet, fierce kind of love that refuses to be erased.